Ladies and gentlemen, it is the most wonderful time of the year. Again, it is the anniversary of September 11th, when Alex Jones rises from the pumpkin patch and gives all good little boys and girls gunshot wounds, I guess. I don't really know what he would. Earlier, I was talking about how Alex Jones would become the ghost of 9/11. He would become the Santa Claus. It would explain why he's getting so fat. You know, it's like when Tim Allen turns into Santa Claus, he slowly starts gaining weight. And I don't know why the 9/11 Santa has to be fat, but I guess since I'm basing this off of regular Santa, that it just makes the most sense.
Or it could just be that 9/11 happened in America and America's fat.
Yeah, it is. It is the only true American holiday. You know, it's like Thanksgiving is a joke. Like I want to get that right off the table. It's so fucking close to Christmas. Nobody thought any of this out. You see all your goddamn relatives, and then you see them a month later. It's the weirdest thing. Like, you know, either slide Christmas back to like late January. You know, Also, there's nothing in later winter to cheer you up. That's it. Along with making Minnesota bigger, we're moving Christmas. That's going to be another project that I'm going to pretend that I'm secretly behind, and then it's going to happen for no reason, and I will be taking all of the credit, and then no one will listen, and that's fine. They shouldn't, because I'll be lying.
I think if you push it back a month, you might ruin the economy, though.
And that would be fine. We could start. No, they'll just turn Thanksgiving into more of a present holiday. They got to split these things up into quarterly. You know, to keep it like people only have so much money. I guess the Santa Claus, Coca-Cola Santa Claus Christmas happened, you know, in the mid-century. You know, when everybody had all the money in the world as long as they were white or whatever. Yeah. Like. Sure, we can have all these holidays all piled. We can blow a bunch of money on Halloween costumes, just make all the food in the world and buy plane tickets and all this shit on Thanksgiving, and then just ball out of control on Christmas. And then 2 days later, it's New Year's.
Yeah.
Like, it's getting overshadowed.
I was just thinking Christmas needs to have like a half birthday, but then it kind of is just 4th of July. And
the 4th of July is fine. I think that, you know, like if we space out. If we start celebrating on 9/11, which is going to be the point of this podcast, I've just decided, we're turning it into a real holiday. Everyone's going to get the day off. Everyone's going to get presents. But that being the case, it's still a little bit too close to Christmas. So it's like Thanksgiving can stay where it is. Yeah. Like, I don't mind kind of this run-up of like, you know, like September 11th's a big one. Halloween's only a thing if you care. You know, you get to have fun and be extra spooky goth or whatever.
Yeah.
Like everyone I've ever dated or been married to, and myself, I suppose. And then we get like let's get rid of Thanksgiving. How about that?
It would be kind of fun if 9/11 was like a Christmas, but instead of like Santa Claus, it's like a bunch of fucking neckbeard libertarians that send a fucking wish list to, you know, Dick Cheney or one of those guys.
Yeah, he would also be like Dick Cheney would be one of the ghosts of 9/11 past or something like that. Like he'd have. Because we have to do the whole entire thing, you know what I mean? We have to have like the 9/11 carol instead of the Christmas carol. Like we have to have, you know, some version of stockings. I also thought of so let's see. I want to tell this. It's not exactly a story since it happened mostly in my imagination, but I guess like you know, there's all this stuff in the world of like. Nicotine vaping and flavor bans, but there always is. It's always all up and down.
Yeah.
And there's a device that we have at work that's kind of designed to get around that, where it's a 2-chambered thing, and you just sell the flavor and the nicotine separately. It's hilarious. Like, that is the zaniest actual scheme that makes people like paycheck money monthly. You know, it literally is part of that, which makes it very real, that I've ever been involved with. I've been involved in plenty of zany schemes.
Yeah.
That's the zaniest real pen to paper ones and zeros in a bank account thing that I think I've ever actually been mixed up in. And I was screwing around with some 3D animation stuff. I made you know, a little ad for it that's going to come out later, but I wanted one where it's like, because the flavor and the vape being two different things is like really important.
Yep.
So what I wanted was to have like, you know, like the boxes are these tall, thin little rectangle boxes or whatever. So, you know, and I've already animated them before for reels of stuff explaining things or whatever at trade shows. whatever. But I was gonna have the nicotine one and the flavor one, and then I was gonna have I wouldn't have to make it. You can just find assets for like $5 or free or whatever to put into After Effects as a 3D thing, and I was gonna have the camera would start on, it would just say like Attorney General's or Minnesota Attorney General's office, and it would pan out and it would be a jumbo jet, and it would fly into the separate nicotine and vape towers, but if the jet would just bounce off and make like a cartoon noise and then explode on the ground or whatever, like boy, like the Equinox, the best of both worlds or whatever you were saying on it. I don't know that we're gonna. I don't know that our boss will let that happen. He will laugh at it, but then probably be like, maybe we shouldn't do that. I don't see any reason not to. I think at this point, when you're dancing with the devil, trying to get around like weird like FDA regulations and stuff, it's like your ad campaign might as well be totally psychotic.
Yeah, you might as well reference 9/11 at that point.
Well, yeah, because we're not selling, like toys to children or like whatever, like we're selling drugs and just trying to figure out how to like not have it backfire. What the laws are always changing, and it's just like, what are they gonna like extra eventually make it illegal? It's like there's no reason not to do this, and plus it could end up being, honestly, in a weird way, if it goes through, it could end up being literally the only thing on the market, and they may not actually be able to legally do anything about it. Meaning that even if people wanted to stage a protest against our horrible 9/11 ads or whatever, they would get famous, and what? Are people going to not buy it? It's like now it's the only thing you can buy. It's like you literally have to, like forcing people to buy the thing they hate to get a flavored nicotine hit.
I think one of my favorite taglines with 9/11 was when Family Guy said it was like 2 pies in the face and a third one in a field in Pennsylvania. I was like, that's a hell of a tagline too.
Yeah. It's funny. I always forget. See, this is why we need to turn this into a holiday so that like the tales can be told. And like it's like I forget about the when they lied that people were like on their cell phones in 2001 in an airplane and it worked somehow, and they said let's roll, but it's like I'm pretty sure they just got shot down. Yeah. Like and they just were like, well, you don't love admitting to to.
Well, they kind of did. I mean, there is. I don't know if you ever saw that
shooting down a plane full of a couple terrorists and like 200 innocent people. That sucks.
Did you ever see the video of Rumsfeld saying that? He said that the plane.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh my God, I'll find it. It's wild. But he's got all these people standing behind him, and like he talks about the planes that hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and the plane shot down in Pennsylvania, and he says those words, and the people behind him that are like suits and ties literally are like,
hey,
like. Wait a minute, he just said that? Yeah, there's a lot of things. Like 9/11, it is one of those things. You and I were talking about this the other day that, like, on one hand, it got obnoxious in the little bit of time right after that where you had all these, affectionately, I think as you refer to them, the dipshits that were on the internet that just, like, somehow, like, the next day woke up with a thermal engineering degree.
Yeah.
Knew exactly what
physics,
temperature it took to
metallurgy.
Yeah. But at the same time, there is still a lot of things about 9/11 that I do have real questions about.
Well, right. It's not that it isn't hinky. It's more that like I almost feel like the weirder conspiracy theories about like it didn't even really happen. The buildings were hologram. All of that shit. Or that it was like completely engineered internally. It's like I think it's just this weird thing that they kind of like let happen, sort of, and also like not completely on purpose. More of a like we kind of just let it happen, and we didn't really want to, but now that we did, we had all this insurance on these buildings, and I don't know, and we got to change all these laws around and fuck everybody over.
Yeah, and plus, if we let this happen, I mean.
Well, the war machine was a little dusty.
It's not going to be terrible for like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and General Dynamics and United Defense and the Carlyle Group. And
you can't just make a phone call like in that dead Kennedy's like interstitial tract or whatever, and it's like we think it's time to have another war. And the guy, Mr. Prime Minister, is like, you have all these young people that are on your dole over there, and all they do is run around and stir up trouble for the police. and we could thin them out a little bit. The British guy, the other like, oh, wonderful. It's like a great fucking thing. But it's like, obviously that's silly. You can't do that. You have to do something.
Yeah.
You have to do a 9/11.
Yeah, and I have a theory that America's so war hungry and has been for so long that like it's almost sort of like the professional athlete thing where it's like you can go for a long time as an athlete, but it's like the second you stop doing it, it's really hard. So it's like they just never stop doing it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, as one seems like it's winding down, it's like, well, we're going to stay here for, might be 1 year, might be 7 years, but until that next thing comes along, and then we'll just move everything over there.
Yeah, well, because that's a funny thing, too. Like, I think people were, like, a teeny bit off the mark, and I'm going to launch into a whole thing I want to complain about, actually, thinking of that, but a teeny bit off the mark when they're like, this war was just for oil, and I'm like, no, it was the war is for the same reason every war is for it. It's that, like, the bombs are the perfect product.
Oh,
like, they cost like $1 million, and you can only use them once. And then, and you got to use a lot of them. You got to use them more than everybody else. And by the way, we're selling them, the old ones, the back stock to the other guys too. And then also we charge to rebuild everything we blew up. It's like this perfect, just giant money Ouroboros that just like sucks in or whatever. Yep. But it's like that doesn't fit on a sign. So it's like, well, it's just for the oil. It's like, yeah, we're gonna steal their oil too. Jesus. Yeah. But it's like that's not that's not even where the real money is. The real money is just making all of the bombs and planes and stuff. And it's like, oh, guys that own like Lockheed Martin and Halliburton and stuff who do that are in big voices. It's like the giantest conflict of interest. Yeah. Everyone kind of forgets about the Bush era. It's like just because Trump is so ridiculous, but it's like there was a lot of shit that was like not very good going on with all that too. And
the other thing that gets kind of not talked about too is the oil, but a lot of poppy fields too.
Yeah, a
lot of poppy fields.
Enough to make you go, now that we have all of this, we should really start prescribing painkillers real willy-nilly for a whole bunch of years until someone makes a stop, which is going to be catastrophic for lots of people. And
it's weird how the timing on that lined up really, really well.
Yeah, it is a little funny. It's almost exactly like also the people who are the beneficiaries of that happening's names are all over everything having to do with everything over there. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, like. No, but that part's crazy. But see, it all just works out. That's the magic of 9/11 that we need to celebrate every year.
It really is, yeah.
It was the gift that it has been now. Yeah,
it's the gift that keeps on taking.
It's the gift that keeps on taking. Yeah, that one thing is like we got the everybody dumb likes to be like, Obama did the Patriot Act. It's like, no, that was your boyfriend George W. Bush, remember?
No, it was absolutely.
And it's like, oh yeah, he kept it going, which he shouldn't do, but...
Yeah, but why wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. What are we going to give? We're going to put this genie back in the bottle?
No.
And I'm not saying he's like blameless, but I'm just saying that like you could be president tomorrow, whoever's watching this, and you'd be like, I don't want this to happen, and then you're just getting JFK'd.
Well, power and money are intertwined, and I can't remember if we were talking about this last time on the podcast about like the economy with inflation and stuff too, where obviously there's all these like super long-winded, boring reasons why inflation happens.
Yeah.
But when something like COVID happens, even as I think you call it, like, sort of stubbing your toe.
Well, the grid stubbed its toe.
Yes. But what I was going to say is like with that, inflation goes up, understandably so, because there are supply line shortages, all these different factors.
Yeah.
But once that end result of the price on the shelf goes up because of the system we live in with stock market shareholders, you really have at that point, even if your cost goes back down,
it can't go back down.
It can't go back. Well, the cost can go back down, but the price can, because you essentially have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. And I kind of feel like government is like that with power too, which obviously power and money are intertwined. Where they're
never giving it back.
Yeah, there's no reason for them to ever give that back.
No. We're gonna like everybody's gonna be on a weird database forever. Well, then also like big tech is like the new oil. It's like they're all mixed up in everything. So it's just like someone was saying it'll never be it's like, you know, it's like we have cameras all over the house and everything like that. And someone was saying, like, you know, maybe it should be like slightly illegal though to like, okay, but they can't be like aimed at your neighbor's house or whatever. And it's like that'll never happen though, because it's just like big tech. What do they want more than, and how does their money happen? It happens by having all of the information about everything you do all the time. So they'll never dredge up new privacy laws. They're just going to stay rolled back. It's like, oh yeah, no, it will never be even a local crime for you to be like filming your neighbor's house. Like you're going to have to like come up with something like having infrared lights like shining back at it, or, you know, whatever. Yeah. Like you just have to solve your own problems there, because we're never doing any sweeping legislation where there's like less info about you.
Yeah.
And it's like the Patriot Act is, you know, it's all predicated on that too. But now that whole like, man, your browsing history is worth so much money, and, you know, all that shit, it's like, and that industry is at the level of buying politicians, like the pharmaceutical companies and oil companies and everything else. So you can watch as like that'll never be anything anyone actually does anything about.
Well, the problem is, like, I want so badly for so many of these things to be these overarching conspiracies that lead back to, you know, Freemasons and Illuminati and Bilderbergs and all these different things. It's like, it's all just about money. Every last fucking, and it's so boring most of the time. You know?
That is a thing too. Like
that's all it is.
I think no matter how, you know, how right-leaning conspiracy theories have sort of become, and how vitriolic and how openly fascist the right has become, like, I still think though that the conspiracy theories, though they've become the darling of that nest of problems over there, they're still invented to confound most of those people. It's like, because the truth is like, yeah, we just took out a giant insurance policy because we knew 9/11 was going to happen, and like whatever. It's like, but like nobody engineered it. There's no Jewish space lasers. It's like you just believe in those so you don't sit there and follow the money and you yell at John when he suggests that maybe you should do that real quick first. Yeah. Also, when you have a fucking first grade grasp on money and economics, it makes following the money kind of hard. That has derailed many a conversation I've tried to have with a few people, because they're like, well, they make their money by doing this. I'm like, nobody makes money by doing that. What the fuck are you talking about? It's like, that doesn't work. It's like, but they do make their money from blah, 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 and blah. So, like, this is probably what's happening. It's like, well, how do they make money off of that? I'm like, well, there's this thing called compound interest. Actually, I'm bored now. Fuck that. Well, I'm giving up.
Yeah, and I'm sure you would probably agree, like, the same with the tech companies when they're, you know, like you talked about, like, mass bulk data collection, like that stuff. It's like, I don't think that's literally because the government wants to listen in on everybody's phone calls because they think everybody's terrorists. It's like, no, they literally just want everything that you're doing on your phone so that they can sell it to Pfizer, they can sell it to Amazon, Walmart, Target, it's just everywhere that, like, literally they just want the data so that they can figure out, how do we let our criminal friends on Wall Street extract as much money out of this person's bank account?
Which they pay us to let them do.
Yeah.
And there are bonuses and there are incentives.
Yeah. and again, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I want so badly for it to be some, you know, Stanley Kubrick, you know, Eyes Wide Shut sort of, you know.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Cloak and dagger sort of thing, but it's just, it's all just fucking so boring. But that's what's kind of cool about 9/11 is that there actually is like there's some real shit that went on there that, like, to this day is really, like, I still want to know my two main questions with 9/11, and you can give me your opinion on these. One is, what hit the Pentagon? Was that actually a plane?
That seems real weird to me, too.
That's real weird. And then what was the deal with Building 7? Those are the two to me. The idea that two planes hit two towers and they went down. Yeah, I get all the idea of you know, that, oh, a plane would never do that. It wouldn't melt the steel. But that's probably all that stuff is true. And I know there's been a lot of...
I think that you can fly, if you fly a jumbo jet. Well, there's a lot of... It's the ballistics of it and stuff. It's like, and I am not a thermodynamics scientist either. But, I mean, I do know... There's a bit of an irony in that, like, you know, some people that spout a lot of stuff about that tend to be kind of like, you know, firearms aficionados, which I also am. Yep. And I know one of the things I love about it is the science of it. Like the science of like ballistics and blowing things up and what happens when this happens and velocity and heat and all this stuff. I find it very interesting, and I know a lot about it now from it just being like, it's like how I can essentially, if I have the right tools, fix a lot of things on a car just because I've been broken down on tour so often. I actually know, oh, this is probably this happening and this looks fucked up. But here's the instructions on how to, whatever. It's literally without really trying very hard, it just sort of becomes this thing. Right. But it's ironic that it's like, well, other people that are in the, deeply into the firearms hobby, that probably spent way more money than I ever have, are like, well, this is impossible. Like, are you sure? It's like, because one of the things about like the steel beams not melting at a certain temperature, like this is the biggest thing for me where I'm like, okay, that argument didn't make any sense, is that prolonged exposures at slightly lower temperatures than the actual melting point will cause heat conducts, or metal conducts heat, and it holds it in and all this stuff. And it's like, if there's jet fuel just burning in there for a goddamn half an hour, it will actually start to like maybe not turn into a puddle of liquid, but bend just enough to not be able to hold up one of the biggest skyscrapers in the fucking world anymore. Yeah. Especially after it just got wanged into so hard that it's probably not completely centered the way it used to be, which it needs to be in order to not fall down, because they're really big, complicated things that you make them that tall and they don't fall down for decades. Like it's exactly, and then so like picking these weird specious semantic arguments that are like, well, this number and then that's the end of that. Now I've dunked on you, and I'm like, there are so many factors. Like, there's a lot of factors in like, shooting a 12 gauge slug at like a metal bucket or something. There's like all the things that happen, whether it goes out the other side, it'll kick back the other way from the exit. If you fill it with water, it'll act differently, whatever. Yep. This was like a massive skyscraper with like all of this stuff going on inside it, and like a humongous ball of energy and explosives and heat and force and whatever flew right into it. And it's like, that wouldn't make it fall down. I'm like, I think that it would do a pretty good job of that, frankly. It's not the best way to demolish a building cleanly. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing that bothers me more about the Twin Towers, like, there's obviously, there is news reports of people that day saying that they did feel a giant explosion underneath them. But it's like, all of those things are just, like the two planes that hit the tower, we know that happened.
We watched that on the old school taped news.
Yeah, and then, and the second one was literally on the news for sure. But even back then, when people didn't have cell phones, it's like, there's still video cameras of people that caught the first plane hitting the tower. Fine, whatever, but Building 7.
Yeah, that one's a problem.
That one's kind of a problem to me. And my issue is there's also interviews out there from people that it might have been the guy that owned those buildings or owned the company that managed them, whatever, but saying that Building 7, because of extensive damage, that they made the decision to pull the building. And this is where I get into the weird of, okay, I'm not a demolition expert, but I have seen enough now and even watched videos of enough people that do that for a living that's like, you can't just do that day.
No.
That takes a week or two of a crew of people setting charges. And then when you look at how Building 7 just goes down in free fall, God, it looks an awful lot like the two main towers kind of do that too. And again, it doesn't mean that they were, but I weirdly think it's like there's a good case to be made that the two towers were also a controlled demolition. But I just think the more compelling case to make is Building 7 and then what the fuck hit the Pentagon.
Yeah, well, the Building 7 is like the thing that was the linchpin. Like, for one thing, it takes like a week to pull a building, and also it's like, I don't think you do it right in the middle of when this thing is happening. It's just like, all right, it's like there's a little paperwork involved in demolishing a building like that. Like, the damage was so extensive, we just had to also just blow it up that day, to just make everything more complicated, fucked up.
Jesse Ventura brought up on the video I was telling you about, that the BBC actually reported about Building 7 collapsing, but they pre-taped it and didn't real, and I guess like it aired in Britain like 20 minutes before it actually
before
went down.
It fell down.
Yeah.
God, oh man, I would love to have been someone that kind of randomly somehow saw that on satellite TV and been like, wait a minute, like to have that memory of like, hang on, and by the way, I am where I do land is I kind of like, I think that like 9/11, the attacks or whatever, I do firmly believe that it did sort of happen the way that it just kind of organically happened, but the amount that we've learned about how much they were kind of like hearing about it and then didn't do anything, and then the biggest thing is them taking out insurance, like extra insurance on all the buildings, all the stuff before it happened, where it's like, well, Building 7 we thought was going to get hit, so we just kind of did it anyway. The Pentagon thing, however, is weird if you are on the side of it was like a premeditated inside job or whatever, you know, where it's like, oh, the whole thing was fake, and they flew, the planes were empty, and they had charges in them all set up, and they just did it so they could do all this stuff. But like hitting the Pentagon, I guess, like with a missile or something, like that's so weirdly random too, because it's such a low building.
Yeah.
And also, like the Pentagon, there's Stinger missiles on the roof of the White House, and that's real. There's nothing like, you know, their website, I think, will tell you that, to like shoot down anything like that. And it's like the Pentagon is who put those there. So like the fact that they didn't have anything to be like, oh, an airplane just went scooching across the ground.
Yeah.
The wings didn't knock anything over. It does feel a lot like if I were to shoot someone in my house that I had tied to a chair or whatever, claim that a group of assassins came in and that's who did it, and then like shot myself in the arm a couple times and then claim like, yeah, they got me and then they got him or whatever. Like the Pentagon feels a little like that. So that's kind of weird because it seems like a plane didn't hit it, and it seems like how would it, you know? It's like they just blew. But what did they do, though, is confusing.
Another weird one, too, the plane in Pennsylvania that, you know, people can go back and find news reporters that were there on site that day. That also was interesting to me is, like, that there was no wreckage of that plane, really. There was nothing bigger than, like, tiny little fragments of a plane. Now, the ones that hit the Twin Towers, fine, whatever. I don't know what was in there. Obviously, the planes collapsed, the towers collapsed. But any time that you've actually just seen a plane crash in a field, it's not like all in tiny little pieces that you could pick up with your hand.
Yeah.
And that, to me, again, not overarching conspiracy, but tells me, like, you know what might do that is, like, if it got shot down.
Yeah. You know? If it got obliterated by missiles or something. Well, the only and
I will say, not to cut you off, but just one last finishing point about that is that I could see them covering up in this sense that if these other planes had already hit the Twin Towers and we think this one in Pennsylvania is actually going to try and fly somewhere else and kill a bunch of people, the government making the decision to shoot that plane down probably absolutely would happen. And also, I get it that, like, from a government standpoint, that, like, we're just gonna say it crashed because, like,
what are we gonna say on this one, boss?
Yeah, it's like, I get that they're not gonna just openly say, we did have to kill 200 American citizens to potentially save tens of thousands more, and have that be a very legitimate decision that probably, like, did have to, like, it's weird and gross that it would have to be made, but, like, I get why they would be like, we're not gonna maybe, like, advertise.
You know who would have the grapes to actually come out and say that? Fucking Starfleet. They would have been like, we had to do it. Someone's getting demoted back down to captain from admiral, or you know what I mean? But they would come right out and be like, that Romulan ship was carrying something so dangerous. We didn't know that it, you know. There were civilian passengers on it. And it was like, we take this very, you know.
So who's the real question is who perpetrated 9/11? Is it Michael Jackson?
No, Bush did 9/11. We know that already. Okay. I've seen a T-shirt to that effect. But Michael Jackson might have had something to do with it. That picture of him with Ronald Reagan and E.T. are both kind of suspicious to me. But like, I did want to say just one thing about the one that they maybe or definitely shot down. There's two things. The counter argument is like, well, why was it just in little pieces or whatever? It's like, well, normally when planes crash, they crash after them trying not to crash really hard. So that, you know what I mean? Like, so they end up kind of like sliding across the ground or like whatever. But it's like, if you're aiming a plane at something and flooring it, which doesn't normally happen in a plane crash, which is something that everybody seems to forget about. So you do realize that, like, typically, like, we don't know what happens when they hit random skyscrapers, because that doesn't come up much unless you're doing it on fucking purpose. Yeah. And this being the main time that ever happened, there's not a lot of, what is that, precedent, you know?
Yeah.
And then the one in the field, it's like, well, it was just like vaporized. It's like, well, yeah, if like they just Allahu Akbar'd it into the ground because there was a bunch of people breaking into the cockpit or whatever like that. They're just like, fuck you. But if they were caught by surprise and it was actually a struggle the way they say it was, where they were just like, it just went down in the fight, it would look a little bit more like a normal plane crash, unless you hit it with a bunch of sidewinders from F-16s, which they definitely did.
Oh, they definitely did. Yeah. Well, I found you can literally just hear the audio, but...
Yeah, put it up to the thing. Yeah, that's Rumsfeld.
World we would face if the people who bombed the mess hall in Mosul, or the people who did the bombing in Spain, or the people who attacked the United States in New York, shot down the plane over Pennsylvania and attacked the Pentagon.
So, you know, he kind of maybe said the quiet part out loud.
We said that the people that crashed the one plane shot down the other one in Pennsylvania, too. He made it sound like that was, like, also... who the hell was it back then? Al-Qaeda?
It
wasn't the Taliban.
I kind of don't think anybody's getting fighter jets that could shoot down an American airline over American airspace.
If they did, they wouldn't have had to have just crashed the planes. Yeah. I mean, they would have just brought their jet fighters in and started shooting missiles and everything.
Yep.
That's the reason that it happened the way that it did, is that it could kind of only have happened that way for them. Now, the fact that it worked is still kind of fucking like... I'm a little all over the road with that one, where I'm like, man, like it was a lot of failures in the intelligence community, or sort of intentional ignorance, like we're sort of accusing, but there's still a lot of it at a lot of levels, which is kind of wild. And then the guys doing it's like plan and execution was like really good. Like, not to, I mean, you don't really want to pat these guys on the back or anything, but I mean, they done it. But like, again, the only case of this happening is when it happened, the one time, basically. So it's like, we base all of our versions of reality that we share off of things we've seen before. Yeah. Pattern recognition is really important. You know, once again, where it's like, I'm like, well, yeah, but like, you know, it's not as simple as, steel beams get hot for this long and they don't, whatever. It's like, it turns out there's a lot of factors that actually cause it to tip over or blow up. But like, because we were aware of other things. But it's like, no one's ever pulled something like this before or since. So we don't have any way to be like, oh yeah, it's totally reasonable that this happened, or no, this is so ridiculous. It would be like you and me, like, safely landing on the moon and getting back home with the money we have in our bank accounts and our knowledge of science right now. Be like, that ain't happening, boys. There's just fucking no way. Or, no, honestly, if you figure it all out, it would be more like you and me using YouTube and like fixing a problem in one of our cars and successfully getting it to drive again. It's like, yeah, you could do it. You could, it'd be annoying and you'd have to go buy the right tools and watch a couple videos and, hit your finger with a hammer and scream in the garage. And John's probably already a little too drunk, but we could do it. Yeah. We could do it. We asked Toby, hey, what would you, it would happen. But it's like, or it's like us landing on the moon and getting home. I don't know. I don't know which thing exactly it is.
Yeah.
Where it's like, enough follow through and enough planning and enough blah, blah, blah. And they just peeled the right banana there. Like, it's kind of crazy, but they done it.
South Park did an actual amazing episode about 9/11 that basically, and I'd actually be curious your thoughts on this, because this actually may be what happened, which is that 9/11 happened mostly the way that they said it happened. But they weren't trying to find out in the South Park who was behind 9/11. It was who was behind the 9/11 conspiracies.
Yeah.
And it turned out that was totally Bush, because in the show it was like, basically we need people to think that our government is smart enough and strong enough to actually
pull
perpetrate and pull that off, but we're not, so we just need everybody to think that we are.
See, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like the conspiracy theories that even make whoever like look bad are coming from those people, though. Yeah. Like, they're just like, well, yeah, of course, like we want you to think that the government has everything under control, or we want you to think that the CIA is actually totally inept and doesn't know what they're doing or whatever, because it's so much better if everybody thinks that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I was just reading something where somebody from the CIA, they were on, I don't know what the hell it was, like some deposition for some reason, but they were like admitting that they had a heart attack gun, which was this like, you know, gas powered thing that fired bullets made of ice, although they specifically said frozen water, which was weird. And frozen within the water was some kind of like sea creature toxin or whatever that would give you a heart attack. And there's parts of that, like toxicology and stuff is actually pretty sloppy, because when you die, your body floods with all sorts of weird shit. Yeah. So it's like, if it looks like a heart attack and you do a tox screen for like a weird rare ocean animal toxin that can kill someone, like, you're probably not going to find it in there.
Yeah.
Because a toxin is like a combination of a million chemicals, and there's something like if you poison someone by flooding their system with potassium, it's like really hard to tell because your potassium comes out of all your cells when you die or something. So it's just a big mess of potassium in there. You turn into a banana when you die, ostensibly. Which is why chimps always want to rip your face off. But the thing is like that part of it kind of made sense. And firing in like an ice projectile kind of makes sense, but the whole thing, like everyone's like, you can't do that. It's like, you keep it in a frozen thing, you propel it with like a CO2 gun or something. It's like, it doesn't have to go if it's sharp, but they're like still like functionally, it probably really wouldn't have worked or whatever. It's like, well, why would they go and say that? It's like, because they lie. The CIA is gonna tell the truth just this once. It's their job to fucking lie about everything. Like when I was screaming about their involvement in some of the civil unrest and the George Floyd like stuff, it's like, yeah, but the CIA doesn't operate in the U.S. They only operate externally. It's like, who told you that? Them? Yeah. Like that, they're not known for playing it straight. And plus, like, we're pretty sure they did all that shit with the Iran-Contra and cocaine and whatever. And it's like, people were smoking the crack here. Yeah. So you're telling me that the CIA had everything to do with that? They handed it off to the fucking FBI real quick because they didn't want to, like, hey, this is my jurisdiction because the state patrol's here. And it's like, nope, this is a federal matter now, boys. Like, they don't want some Dick Tracy bullshit going on. So it's like, well, we'll let you guys handle the coke. Although we kind of don't want you to know about it at the same time. Yeah. Maybe we'll just do it ourselves. Maybe we just say we never operate in America because we constantly do. And it's a giant lie. And so people on the internet will yell at me for suggesting that perhaps they had something to do with that, because their whole job is to destabilize things all around the world, and occasionally stuff here. And then when it happens, it looks exactly what it looks like when they do it other places. And they have a giant motive, and like all this other crazy shit would just be like very obvious. It's like, well, of course they would do that. Yeah. It's like, it's actually against the rules. Everything they do is against the rules. You're not supposed to destabilize the Middle East for money. It's like, it's against the rules to do that. But it's what they do. You're not supposed to trade like missiles for cocaine. Like, that's not in the rules.
Why do you think we do that? Do you think it is just boils down to money, like the old United Fruit Company or like oil companies, like in terms of toppling regimes everywhere?
Yep, toppling regimes is the thing. That's the biggest thing that, and it's again, do you believe what you read from stuff that seems pretty credible? Like, yeah, they like read books by the George Friedman, who ran Stratfor, which was like an intelligence agency. They were into forecasting. Like they're like, here's what's probably going to happen in the next 20 years, and they're pretty good at it in a geopolitical sense. Not like, oh, we invent, but they know so much that they're like, all the weapons that people have already that we think aren't real, like they're very aware of those. They're like, well, these guys are probably going to do this with those eventually. That's their job to figure that out. And I am not basing my entire worldview on like a couple of books, but they did talk about how it's like the strength or purpose, I guess, in destabilization is that so you never actually have to like deal with a conflict that might have real consequences you could lose. Because like obviously we like wars that go nowhere because we just sell weapons. Like that's all we do. But you can't ever have someone get so big they're like, whoa, 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 we might actually like lose this one, as in they show up over here or something. Like, you don't want that. And you don't want like certain little things happening, like, oh, this trade route is permanently closed because this conflict sprung up here. We're cool with them happening everywhere else. We don't really give a shit because we're making all this money selling bombs and then, you know, charging to build the buildings that we blew up back. Yeah. But like, oh, if this trade route or if this like pipeline blows up or whatever, it's a big problem. And if it turns into a hot war, we're actively trying to get people to not do that 24/7. That's going to be really hard. So if we like just make it so the country's so fucking messed up they can't really do anything to mount much of. We're just like shaking up the ant farm till the ants figure out how to get out of the farm and strangle us in our sleep. Like that's their entire job, and they do it. You know, all over the entire fucking world. They also, I mean, yeah, money is made. But to see it, what they were originally called something like they're like the OSI or something like that, but like or OSS.
OSS, yeah.
Yeah.
Before it was the CIA.
Yeah, their actual stated mission. It's how the Department of Defense used to be called the Department of War. They just changed the name. Yeah. But the OSS was like, once international trade became a thing, and America got involved in it, let's say, because we were kind of isolationist for like a while there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when we weren't, and there was big, huge money on the table, this group suddenly appeared whose job it was to go around and make sure nothing ever like, you know, fudged that party up at all.
Yeah.
And a good way to do that is to like fuel coups and this banana republics and all that shit where it's just like, oh yeah, like the price of bananas was too high, so like our goon squad, like they are just like if America was like a legitimate business with like a shady underbelly, it's like the CIA is that. They're like they're like, well, we're gonna sue them, and then if that doesn't work, we're gonna break their daughter's legs so they get drowned in medical debt, and then they can't keep fighting our lawyer. It's like they're those guys for us. And it used to just be it was way out in the open because no one gave a shit. It was like, like, well, yeah, we don't want those brown people getting in the way of this trade route, but they keep competing with our ships and it's like, well, what if that country wasn't so much of a country but like a weird puppet dictatorship where we told them what to do, and it was also so inefficient that people starved all the time, and then the least of their concerns is like competing with our ocean liner business over here, and we're like, oh well, that would do very nicely. Couldn't you just wholesale exterminate them? It's like, oh, we thought of that. This is actually cheaper. That's the only reason we're going this way, because we just have to fuck with this and this. You know how much loading all those people onto trains would be? Do you know like dropping a nuke actually might turn some people's opinion against us? We kind of have to avoid that. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do instead. And the real extra double fun part of that is like all of that goddamn like Chinese or Russian bot farms or whatever that like make those Facebook groups that set up protests against each other. That's their little way of trying to do that back to us, because everybody does it. We do it to them, but they're like, we can't. Doing a 9/11 is hard. That's why it's such a special holiday. And so you got to do more of like a Trump wins an election in 2016. You got to do it 2016. That's easier. And they're probably surprised that worked.
I want to know what the deal is with South America is a weird one, because all the stuff going on in Venezuela too. It's like that's one that I find weird too, that we've tried to coup Maduro out for like 20 years and it just hasn't really worked. And it feels like any other place in the world that we've tried to do that many times in a row, eventually, like, you're getting some bombs dropped on you.
Yeah, I think it's there the way the Joker needs Batman or whatever. Like, I think it's a very like.
Oh, you think they just need the spooky communist place or something?
Yeah, because a lot of the big cases where like. Yeah. Any kind of socialism doesn't work if you dig into it even a little. It's like, oh yeah, again, our goon squad arm, the CIA, like went and just like torpedoed that through external forces, which they absolutely have the ability to do, because it's like they literally are concerned about there ever being a really successful state like that out there, because then we're gonna go like, well, oh, then what the like Northern Europe is lucky they're white, I think, like. For some reason, it seems like, well, we could just call them gay. Like, we don't really have to like ruin everything. Plus, there might be some like real consequences where like a Great Britain is like, we like capitalism too, but you Americans have gone too far this time.
Yeah.
And then we have to fight like Europe. That wouldn't be good.
No.
Remember the last 2 times we did that? It was rough. And it wasn't even most of Europe. It was only some of it.
I saw too. I don't know if you saw Elon Musk. Like a lot of the shit that I don't know if you saw that's been going on that he got banned and or
Something happened to him in South America because he was
in Brazil. They're not gonna that's a whole other convoluted story. But part of I think why Brazil was so upset about it was like Bolivia just had a whole bunch of like stuff go on, and like they were also mad at Twitter for allowing what they call disinformation. You say whatever.
right.
I don't know if it was actual disinformation or just one side's political speech that the other side in power didn't want. I don't know. But he did tweet out something to the effect, like somebody basically bitched on X on Twitter about Twitter doing that, and he literally tweeted back and said, "We will coup whoever we want." I was like,
Elon Musk has become such a fuckboy for wanting to be like in the government. Like it's like he's been a fuckboy. Well, no, he's just been a weirdo. But
why couldn't he be if he just wanted to be? Or does he not want to be because he's got so much fucking money that it's just...
No, he wants. I mean, from what I think, and everything is always meant to look the way it looks and not actually like what you're seeing or whatever, because they're going for a outcome. But like, it seems like I think no one would have him, like, because he's kind of because like Elon Musk was one of the richest people in the world. At least, I mean, he lost like literally most of it by being an idiot. But
I think he still is, though.
Well, here's the thing I was going to say about that. Those lists there are people so much richer than the people on those lists, and they pay to not be on those lists. That is a thing. You think when they say it's Elon Musk and not like a Saudi king or something, you're like, get the fuck out of here with that. There are people that are trillionaires currently, and they're like, yeah. We don't need our name in anybody's fucking mouth.
Yeah.
And that's just never going to happen or whatever. There are people out there, the way Joe Rogan sucks Elon's dick, he wants to be like those people, but it's like he doesn't know how to make $1 trillion. Things all worked out for him and he made billions of dollars, but like and he made some moves that were like good, I'll give him that, but it's like he didn't invent any of that shit that he sells. He just knows how to acquire companies, which again, I don't really know how to do, so good for him there. But
I would say his most endearing quality is he at least invested some of the money that he didn't deserve into some causes that were reasonable.
yeah.
What a glowing endorsement.
Sure, I use PayPal, I mean, whatever, like, but
I don't hate the idea of Tesla or
no.
Like in theory, I don't know that he's the one back there like
no, he's not doing anything.
Bolting the rockets together or anything.
No,
but
he's just there terrorizing his employees, but he has this cult of personality that like, but that's the thing. I think he knows that it's like his ego drives him to be, he can't be president because he's like technically not born in America, same way Arnold Schwarzenegger can't or whatever. But he could be like, and he's not rich enough. That's the wild thing. Yeah. Like guys like him and Bezos are still like, they're still like the logical conclusion of almost more like someone like our boss just doing everything right until he owns something the size of Best Buy or Amazon or whatever. Yeah. It's like, that's still like, and it's weird talking about it like this, but that's not fucking eyes wide shut money, I don't think. Not really. Not the people, like the people in the movie fucking each other maybe, not the guy throwing the party. Yeah. That's who he wants to be, and he's like, I don't know how to make $1 trillion. Like, he's losing money hand over fist, and he clearly seems to just care about his like weird like public influence or whatever. So it's like, well, okay, so nobody needs me on one side of the aisle because I just disgust people, and like, so they're just like, yeah, what am I gonna get like mixed up? But he's like, in Trump he sees someone who will let his dumbass be on his presidential cabinet because he had like, Betsy DeVos or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
She was just like like someone whose billions came from screwing like the Department of Education over and just put her in charge of it. Like it's like Spaceballs. Like Trump did that last time where he put conflicts of interest in charge of every giant thing. He's like, Elon's like, I want to be in charge of all the tech stuff, and I'll be the guy that runs the propaganda and the Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Like that. He wants to like have a bunch of medals that he didn't earn. And I want that too, but I know that I can't make that happen. And like Jesus Christ, I would love to find a way to be a guy with a bunch of unearned medals. It's like, also though, once you start being people like that, that's when that regime ends. You start getting hung. Like as soon as you start pinning those fake medals on all those dudes around you, either you become North Korea or you become everywhere else that's tried that, and you end up in like a fucking shallow grave someone made you dig. Like that is where all of that goes. So it's like, oh yeah, like I would have been a really good like no, I'm not just start picking people out of Hitler's cabinet. Look, that's stupid. I shouldn't do that on the air. But it's like I'm a good propaganda guy, and wouldn't it have been fun to be that guy? But those guys all got killed, and they deserve to be.
Yeah.
And like, but this is America, so I think Elon Musk just wants to be Heinrich Himmler to fucking Trump. And also like. Elon's weird, but like he is smarter than Donald Trump. That's got to be true. He's a guy that
seems way too autistic to not be.
He was born into a lot of money, but he also used it to make more rather than basically breaking even and squandering it forever.
Yeah.
Like Trump did. Like he actually did turn like hundreds of millions of dollars into like actually like $100 billion till he lost it all by Twitter. But like. He did do that.
It's just a microcosm, really, for just how trash society is now. I don't put this all on him, but just like we're literally at a point now where, like, at least on paper, the richest man in the world is a guy who will literally like tweet out something like, "According to Professor Sug on D's nuts."
Yeah.
Fuck he tweeted a couple weeks ago.
He's an absolute fruitcake, and it's like kind of funny. But I said fucking years ago. And I believe it's on one of these. Oh my God, probably one of the podcasts with Bill. But I don't even remember how long ago it would have been. Maybe it was on Rum Dumpster. But like, I said that like Elon Musk is Trump for atheists that are into crypto or something. Like, and it's like, but this was when like Trump was getting elected. This wasn't even like that long.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like recently. We're like, well, of course you would say that now. But I'm like, no, watch this guy go. Watch this. It was like right around when he was making fun of the divers trying to save people or whatever. I'm like, oh, I see what this dude's doing.
Yeah.
He wants to be. He thinks he can make that magic happen by being like a weird edgelord and how did Trump get so big? Twitter. So he's like, well, I'll buy it. Yeah. Because that's what I do. I buy things that I think, but this time I'm not buying it to make money. I'm buying it to like become the next guy everybody looks at, like this guy that has this like this undying cult of personality or whatever, and it's like, and that's through that is where the money will get made. But it's like he can't become president, so what's the next best thing? Suck it up to the one guy that would be happy to have him, by being his protege or whatever. Like he's like younger, but it's like, we'll change those rules, like Trump will figure out a way to get the Supreme Court to be like, oh yeah, you can actually be born in South Africa and only South Africa and be president, and be like, yep, and then there he goes because he is younger, well, it's like,
I don't know if you saw they had talked about it briefly on when Trump did that 2-hour interview on X with Elon.
Yeah.
And
I tried to watch parts of that and I couldn't.
I got through about 30 minutes and it was just like it kind of got boring. I feel like conversations like that, it's like I don't know, man. Like certain things just need to be condensed more, and that was definitely one of them. But he did bring up in that interview about that potentially Elon wanted to come up with a government accountability board that would basically come in under the Trump administration and just like figure out ways that we can like cut government spending. Fine, whatever. Elon needless to say, said he would be happy to be a part of that committee.
Oh, yeah.
But Trump then...
Because then you could probably decide where it doesn't go and then where it does go.
Yeah. But I thought you'd think it was funny, too, was Trump literally said he started gassing Elon up for that because he's like, I would be interested in that because, I think you'd be really great at that, especially you look at, like, what you did at, Tesla and SpaceX when people said they were going to unionize and you came in and said, watch this. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, literally, it's like, so wait a minute, your ability to union bust is why you should figure out where tax dollars go and don't go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we're going to consult Professor Sug on these nuts to figure it out. But that's what I find so weird about him specifically. I don't know, like, what it is about his... I think you're right about the atheist, like, crypto fuckboy.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Because, like...
The neckbeards love him.
I get that, to your point, there probably are, like, people out there that are richer than that we don't know about. But you don't see... I don't see Jeff Bezos out there tweeting shit like that.
He doesn't care about any of that. I mean, he's weird too, but like he's just doing his own weird thing.
But like Larry Fink from Black, like you don't see those guys like on fucking Twitter like, hey, let me call this person a fucking dipshit on Twitter. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
and that's what I don't get is usually the reason why people like that don't do that is because like I don't have a fucking time in the day. Like what? Like we don't have time to be tweeting. But somehow him and Trump just always have that time at 3 o'clock in the morning on the shitter to be like, everybody fucking needs to know what's rattling around with the, next to the couple of brain cells I have left.
Yeah, there was long ago, there was a guitar player I fired from my old band who had managed to convince that, and you know me by now, so it's like, this is obviously like not the case, but he had everyone convinced that he was the primary songwriter or whatever. And I did go on, I think it was MySpace, it'd be like, you'll notice that the rest of us don't have time the way he does to just tell every last 14-year-old girl that ever goes, by the way, that's also... I made sure to mention that every last 14-year-old girl that goes to our shows, that he's the primary songwriter. He wasn't busy writing songs while he was doing that. That's kind of why I fired him or whatever. And the backlash he got from that. It's back when the internet worked.
Oh,
when you could say something like that and everyone was like, oh, yeah, that's true. Fuck that. Instead of like, well, I don't know. That's not how he tells it. I'm like, well, that's my point. But, fuck, I had something really funny about something with like, I don't know, fuck Elon Musk, I don't care. Trump, I
more just wonder what's the weird pathological thing in their personality that makes them do that for some reason doesn't seem to exist in most other people that are of that. Because it more seems like it's the other way around where most people that are like those guys don't ever end up that rich.
No, I think it's just that sometimes they do, and it's just proof that the way in which that happened was only because they were like, born with like hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's like, I just wanted to, one of our coworkers the other day told me like he had just discovered, or was just telling me that the sky was blue. That he's like, it is, I guess it is true. It's easier for a guy with $1 million to make $5 million than it is for a guy with like, for guys like us to ever make like $1 million. I'm like, yeah, I know that. That's why I'm a communist. Yeah. Like, which I'm not really, but I love telling him that. I'm like, yeah, it completely is like impossible. But once you are, I was saying upstairs, where it's like if I had like $5 million, I mean, at that point I just wouldn't spend it. I would just invest it. You'd have to do it a certain way, and I'd probably even like hire somebody to be like, all right, like we gotta. Someone with a better eye for this stuff, but it's like if you set yourself up in the stock market the right way with $5 billion, it'll yield like $400,000 a year, and if you're like, yeah, but that's not millions a year, and it's like, would you shut up? You'll never lose that $5 million until you're older, and you'll just live like pretty goddamn good without ever having to work. You could also work on top of that, or take money like that. You could live in a nice little house and then just like invest it in a crazy business that also gets really, makes you another $5 million. It's like, you don't just spend that money, but it's like, once you have it, you can just do fucking anything or nothing and like just make more money. Like, it's absolutely crazy how it works. So it's like, people were just like, well, it's not that Trump and Elon Musk didn't have that big of an advantage. It's like, you just told me that you figured out that this is exactly how it fucking works. Like, he only got like $10 million. And it's just like, if he had stuck that in a Roth IRA, he would have more money than he has now instead of bankrupting casinos and liquor companies. Jesus Christ, that's impossible. Like,
the casino one is what's really crazy.
God.
Even liquor company,
well, sure, okay.
We've been endorsed by liquher companies.
I should have said casino and universities, because those are just scams too. Like most of them, like, oh, well, if you're going to be a doctor, sure, but there's so many people who are like, well, now you need a master's degree to teach preschools. Like that'll be $180,000, please. Like, okay, there's no other choice.
Just a fucking hysterical and disgusting fucking clip the other day too of that Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank.
Oh yeah,
but it was. Come
on, please continue.
Somebody was talking, or he was on some news show, and they were saying, like, how do you feel when you know that the 85 richest people in the world have the same amount of wealth as the bottom half of the world? And he literally goes, I think it's fantastic.
Well, of course.
Literally just. Because basically, like, it just gives everybody the incentive to work a little bit harder, and
for us, so we can make more money without doing anything.
Yeah, and it was like, that. But yeah, that's the other thing too that I don't go off about Kevin O'Leary, but just to your point about Elon and Trump and people that sort of like were born into that too, is like there really is like this disconnect of like, yeah, these people in Africa or Southeast Asia or something, they just got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Yeah, there was a pretty like rich guy that, like, I wish I remembered his name because it was like a good thing to say. He's one of those people that was more on the side of like, yeah, I'm doing great, but I mean, like, this is unsustainable. Like, and even if he's not being empathetic, he's still like, he knows that like he'll just get eaten eventually. Like when everything falls apart, his money will be as good as toilet paper. But like, who was like, if I had been born in, like Southeast Asia and like in a depressed village or whatever, it's like, I might be the guy with the biggest watermelon stand, like on the side of the road. Yeah. He's like, maybe, probably. Like, he's like, I think that would be, it's like, that would probably be me. Like, whatever, but that would be it. Yep. It's not like, I was born, well, you can figure it out and become a guy living like in a even like an upper middle class American lifestyle, maybe not a billionaire, but you could do pretty good. No, he'd be like, I'd have the biggest watermelon stand. Yeah. So it's like, I have an extra pot to shit in where everyone else has to share one. It's like, okay, like, yeah, because he's like, I'm good at stuff, but maybe not even, because I definitely like went to school here, and it's like you could pay to get a really great like private education, or you can't do that there. It's like, maybe I would know nothing about selling goddamn watermelons unless I was lucky enough for my dad to tell me how to do it. Like, he was being very straight about it, and that is the truth. It's like, you can do all kinds of crazy things, but you kind of have to work within your idiom, or you can't just transcend. It's like,
I'm curious where you stand too on like I mean, that's pretty broad, but like patriotism and the idea that like America sucks, because I do think there's a lot of
patriotism and the idea that America sucks. That'll be your like next to Ann Coulter's like book in the.
Well, I mean, they're really wrapped hand in hand at this point.
I know.
But, I said it in the sense of like, because kind of what we're just talking is like, there is just so much shit about this country that just like, I spent a good amount of time in Sweden this summer, and like, a lot of things there that like, wow, a public transportation system that's cheap and goes everywhere and is always on time, and like we actually like deal with our social problems and a lot of things. But then at the same time is like, there is something to that effect of like, American style capitalism is like what's led like some of our poorest among us to probably still live better than the rest of the world. And it's like, is that at the expense of the rest of the world, or is there something inherently sort of good about America that makes it so that like guys like me and you can like own a house, whereas like there probably is a lot of other places we couldn't do that.
Well, I think that I want to say something real quick about the public transit thing. It goes hand in hand. You know why we don't have that? It's literally the car manufacturing lobby. Like, L.A. used to have trolleys. If you watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit or anything from like back in the day. And they were great. Like, they were actually, like, better. Maybe the subway in New York is better, kind of, but it's like they were certainly better than buses, or way better than a lot of things. Yeah. And the car companies just lobbied to get rid of them. They were like, oh, they're dangerous, and they're so they could sell cars. That's what makes America America, is that you ruin, like, some kind of utopian piece of infrastructure so you can sell more cars, but you sell so many cars that, like, there's people in Detroit who are, like, one income, and then they have like 6 kids and their wife doesn't work or whatever. They have like a house and a car, and then they're not even making payments on it. There is a certain element to trickle down economics where it's like, if everything is just so crazy, your cup runneth over. But the problem is that it's like the divide keeps getting bigger, where it's like, well, yeah, but then once all those car places like close down, it's like, well, now like 10 people make all the money off of all the LA traffic. It's just like you ruin those people's lives. All those plants in Flint and Detroit closed down and everything. And it's like, yeah, okay, it was like great. So I think that's the concern as far as patriotism in America sucking, is that like you and I have coasted through. I'm not saying that to be mean to either of us, and I'm not making assumptions to you. You're very good at what you do. I'm pretty good at what I do, but like I never went to college. Like I was saying, I think I just manifested my job where you work, where you just like, I was like, I need to figure out somewhere where they don't care like what I do or what I, as long as I'm just figuring it out, it's fine. As long as I'm doing whatever needs to be done. But it's like people just drinking beer at work, or just like, I gotta, like, nobody calls in sick. We just don't show up and it's fine and whatever. And it's like, I'm like, I want something like that. The universe was like, God, that doesn't exist. What the fuck are you? Oh, there's like one place and your friend works there. Okay, well, yeah. And you definitely introduced me to that or whatever. But I'm like, that's America. Yeah. Like, that's like, that can't possibly happen in another scenario where you're like, oh, you can just like smoke weed and just like, you know what? I think I might make a bunch of these today. You were experimenting with like a new thing. You're like, well, if I can do it fast enough, that'll totally be like, and then the guy in charge is like, well, if you can figure it out, fucking go for it, buddy. It's like, it's so like, just kind of almost, it feels like magic that it works. Now there's behind the scenes. There's like, I had to learn how to do video and stuff, and you had spent a lot of time learning how to do glass blowing and everything like that. But it's like, still, we didn't have to like hurt ourselves really. Dude, and be like, I had to dig a ditch. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it just, we kind of got house and car money from sort of pursuing it's like, oh, it wasn't music. The biggest tragedy behind us is that, like, our second best fucking skills are what just allowed us to live the goddamn American dream without killing ourselves. Just like, it would have been a little cooler if it was rock and roll universe. And it's like, hey, I'm trying, guys. Fuck you. Like, and that wouldn't be possible in, like, I don't think the Philippines for us, maybe, maybe not. Maybe we'd have to have, like, broken our bodies and sweated a lot more.
Well, it's even,
maybe.
I mean, I was born into probably, like, lower middle class, and realistically, again, is like, even thinking back to my childhood, it's like, God, it's probably better than 95% of people that get born into this world.
Dude, I was born in a trailer fucking park, and it got better even like with it's not like my parents are still in a trailer park. I want to always want to kind of like I mention that, but I want to smooth over that it's like that's where I was. But nevertheless, I like kind of didn't try to like make money on purpose for pretty close to the first 30 years of my life, and still was like, you know what though, I think I could figure it out. That's like, like having a job like, like I have even is like the kind of thing where it's like, well, yeah, but you went to like school and you had to start by answering the phones or whatever. And it's just like, no, just kind of fucking screwed around playing the keyboard for a while and seeing how many genital warts I could rack up. And
I was just thinking with the public transportation thing too, that about the automobile industry lobbying that is I was thinking to myself, I was like, wonder why that didn't happen then in Europe, because they still have all these auto manufacturers in Europe. And then I thought about it, I was like,
there's rules over there.
Yeah, and then also is how many of those cars of those auto manufacturers over there just making for the American market too?
All of them. Yeah. That's Well, and the other thing too is they prioritize fucking like, yeah, but we need everybody to be able to get to work, and it's like you can either pay the people that work in your car plants more or make your cars cheaper, and it's like, well, let's just sell them to America, and then we'll just have trains here, and everyone can just ride around on, because like it's, you know, it's like it. Yeah. Everything is better when everything is better for everyone, and they understand that a little bit more, and it's like it's a little bit less fentanyl-y in the streets, although it's still, that's a thing everywhere, but like,
yeah,
so. Shit, I got way off on the LA thing. What was your final point of patriotism in America sucking?
I think just more or less like, is it, you know, is there something to be said for the idea that does the lowest levels of poverty for the most part in America, you know, equal to or more or less than like a lot of other parts of the world, and it's like, is that because there is something inherently good in America as well, or is that just because all of that just comes at the expense of everybody else across the planet?
Oh, it comes at the expense of everyone else across the planet. That, yes. That is absolutely... I was literally...
I was struggling to get the words out, sorry.
No, you got it. And it like, that is the thing where Doug Stanhope had a bit about American poverty versus everywhere else, where he's like, well, I have a car, but I gotta roll the passenger side window down with a pair of pliers, and I can't afford all these streaming services, so I have to pirate some of it. And then like in other places it's like, I'm spearing rats in a dump that's currently on fire to eat because that's where I live. Or whatever. It's like, but that's like the fact that like our poorest people have to like pirate their own DVDs is literally because everyone else would view our jails as like a palace. Yeah. Like there's a metal bowl filled with clean drinkable water, and you can push a lever and it refills. You can poop right in it and it'll just go away. Like, wow! Like I can practice homosexuality freely here without the local mullah calling for my head, like, or whatever. Yeah, no, we fucked. Like, it's the CIA's job, like I was saying. Like, and, you know, the way I look at it is every once in a while, you know, 9/11 happens as either a rebuttal to, like, all of the fucking around we've done. I like that narrative just because I'm okay with it as, like, vengeance for, like, us destabilizing things. Because that was the point, is that, like, we'd fucked everything. They're like, all right, well, we're going to get them back. And that did destabilize us. Although it did probably make everything worse all around the world too, largely. So, you know, good job, terrorists.
I wasn't in one.
You're right. Yeah, it's fine. But like the idea that it's just more of the same of us just pulling it, like, or letting it happen on purpose just so we can do more of the shady shit is also so on brand for us here in America. And I just like. I know that it's been a little over an hour maybe, but I saved this picture. Actually, let's go to the second one first. The reason I almost forgot 9/11 was happening. I thought it was like still months away when you mentioned something about it, and then I was just like, oh yeah, it's like fucking 3 days from now. Jesus. So a friend of mine, my favorite Sasquatch from Ohio, got a picture of this West Virginia circular. Now, some of you might remember last year's 9/11 special when I tried to make reservations at this place that was like serving the, like, you know, never forget martini, and like that. It was like a yacht club that was having a fucking like 9/11 themed. Did I ever even show you that? I don't have that right now, but they were a real place, and Meredith was doing that one with me, and there was a number, so I called them, and they answered, and I tried to make reservations, because I love making reservations. I learned how to do fake business from Tim Dillon. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, I need a table for, because I was like fully, when they answered, I was like, so, I have a party of 5, high top is fine, but if we could, and they're like, sir, 9/11 day is canceled, and I'm like, is the bar open? Like, it is canceled. So, like, he was like really mad, but I was talking so much shit about it being fake, and then I dialed the number, and this pissed off guy answered because he'd gotten a shitstorm on the internet from it. But anyway, having not learned that lesson, there's an HVAC company in West Virginia that sent this out as a circular, which is
wow, there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, for one. It is. You know what though? Here's what I will say about them: is they're trying.
I like how they use the what looks like a real dog with just a clearly like the first like shitty Photoshop fake tear.
Yeah.
Dog's crying.
Well, also the dog's chin. Like,
Yeah,
the dog
what is
looks
going on with the chin?
fucking
I'm like-
bizarre.
It's like
And the dog is crying about 9/11, by the way. It's not a person. Like, someone had to have had some stupid work meeting where they're like, what does everybody love? Because if we show a guy crying, they'll be like, you used a white guy. If we show a black guy crying, it's going to say some weird shit about something I don't want. How about a dog? Yeah, the dog's crying about 9/11.
I do like how literally the part where the buildings are on the most fire is where they chose to put the words quality home comfort.
Yeah, like, this doesn't feel real at all. But
No.
again, it was just a picture that someone that I, like, the only problem is, and I'm learning this in real time right now, this is the whole picture that we got, and I couldn't get anything else. The number is fucking cut off.
Oh, shitty.
Because I was going to call them. Now, we could probably Google it.
Yeah. I was going to say, what if they just, like, rushed up to the Twin Towers when they heard everything was happening just to, if anybody needs work on their AC and furnace, we heard you had some building problems.
Well, that's when I was working at a tele-survey job where I would call places and ask them to rate there, because it was 2001, There's no internet. Well, there's an internet, but not like now. And like, how do you think about your water filtration system you just bought? How likely would you to be like that? I did that for a while.
Yeah.
And we were calling Manhattan when 9/11 happened. And, like, I saw it on the news and I got up and I still had to go to work. And I called and no one was answering. It was weird. Until someone did. And he was not happy with me. Boy, oh boy. It was like I held the phone like this. Like, you realize there's a national emergency going on, blah, blah, blah. And like in the moment I was like, well, yeah, but it's not really national. It's just, kind of localized to 2 buildings. So if you could just let me know how your water filtration. And he was just like, I'm going to call the cops on you. And it's like, well, the reason, or the FBI or something, like, he threatened something. I don't know why he didn't just hang up on me.
Yeah.
So the rest of this is his fault. I then was like, well, the reason we're doing this is because my boss did tell me that people in Manhattan like you are too big of pussies to call the FBI, so we could probably just keep working. And he's like, what? And then like I hit the transfer button right when he started yelling, and then 10 minutes later we all got to go home. Because I was a lot more of a jerk when I was 21, like.
I like how you literally just said that the rest of this story is his fault, and then proceeded to say the next thing that happened was me calling him a pussy.
He should have hung up on me. You got to, there. You know what? It was 9/11 was happening.
It was
you got to
his fault for not hanging up and continuing to take my abuse.
Yeah. You got to keep this line clear. Well, if he wasn't so rude to me in the first place, too. I mean,
no, he had it coming.
It may have been vaguely justified on his part, but it's like he should have just taken a deep breath and hung up the phone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a dark note to end on, which I don't want to do. I do have another picture that
what's the other picture?
Alexis found, and the thing about this picture is, I heard. I'm not gonna tell you what it is before I show you, but Alexis told me what it was before she showed me, and I have got to say, in my imagination, it was funny, but it wasn't as gross in my thought. Like, for some reason, I was like, well, maybe someone's doing this on purpose because they're, like, an attractive person and maybe I don't know, whatever. I can't believe the drop-off between I imagined it being pretty gross and, like, unpleasant and uncomfortable. And then when I saw it, I was like, it's like God made this to make me wrong about what I thought, like, on purpose. So I don't want to oversell it, but... So like someone apparently just took this picture out their window of the car next to them. If you want to give a little bit closer look at what's happening in this general region here.
So, has he just got a dildo in his mouth?
Yeah, just like a guy with like no chin and like the ugliest guy driving a pickup truck to work or wherever is just sucking on a dildo with those half balls only exist so that you can feel them slapping against the rest of your vulva.
This is another thing that is uniquely American.
It's what I love about this country.
You know what I mean?
If you were going to ask me that, and I think you kind of did, I would show this picture. Like he's not going to get... in trouble for that. Like,
no, I wonder, like, I always wonder when I see shit like this, just like...
and often we do.
Often we do. But,
actually, we do.
Like, and maybe this is just like the... I don't know, but, like, I look at shit like that, and it's like, what series of childhood traumas and mental health events led to that person right there in that car?
I'm going to go way out on a limb here and say none. That is a man that knows what he's about. I think that is in itself. That is what, if you're wondering what a self-actualized, enlightened person looks like, you're looking at it right there. He's like, I'm driving what I believe is a bright red Dodge Ram. I think that's the beginning of their logo there.
Jesus.
Yeah, he looks like a guy that's really into trains, and he's with like a gross little mustache, and he's just got like a huge suction cup dildo just in his mouth, like a long blade of grass in a hayseed's mouth on his porch, just being like, well, I mean, it's taking up more real estate in his mouth than the hayseed would, but and just driving.
Yeah.
And, like, so the reason I say that, like, what I was imagining when she's like, there's a guy in a car with a dildo in his mouth, for some reason my mind went to, like gay guy that keeps himself in shape that might have been sending a picture to a twink or something, that he's trying to pick up or whatever you do. Rather than, like, a weird farmer with both hands on the steering wheel. No camera or phone. Just holding that thing, and it's like, I don't know if he's kind of casually, like sucking it in and out like it's a binky. Yeah. It's like, that's what, he's got a big day at work, and this is kind of how he, like, I guess I don't really know if maybe he's going home. This is how he unwinds.
Yeah.
Or whatever like that. But just the more I look at it too, the more it's like, I kind of like, I want someone to paint this for me. And I want to put it somewhere just as like a reminder of like, because think about it like this. There's a lot of people probably, now maybe he has no childhood trauma, but there's a lot of people in his youth that he would know full well that he's like, I can't just idly suck on a giant hangy ball dildo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, without some kind of repercussion or whatever. But like, instead, he's just like, he's not doing this in the privacy of his own home. I don't think he's doing it to be an exhibitionist either, because he's like, it's in the dark. Like, you'd have to try to get a picture like that. Most people, when they're driving, are kind of facing forward or whatever. He is just doing this because this is what he does. Yeah. Like, he is like, this is my morning commute. I don't care if anybody sees me. Like, it just doesn't matter.
Like, I wonder what the first day was that he did that and was like, you know what? I'm doing this today. That
probably had some real Peter Griffin energy. Like,
you know what I mean?
I'm taking this couch. I'm taking this. Like, I don't give a shit. I am just going to suck this dildo on the way to work. It's like, it's like, if somebody, it's like me. It's like if somebody like like a friend or something. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, throws me some like Vicodin or whatever because I was bitching about something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well I have a few left over you can have," and I'm like, "My tooth doesn't actually hurt at all," and I'm like, "I'm gonna just take this before I go to work today." Or maybe a mushroom microdose in a capsule or whatever, and just be like, it's gonna be a real silly day. And it's like, what if you like freak out? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. We're gonna see. Yeah. And then it's like a lifelong pattern of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go for. But that's what I mean. This is aspirational. Yeah. Like, he's just like, I'm just gonna do this. Like, maybe he's working his way up to like eventually, like maybe he's the boss at some like construction company. He's like, I'm just gonna be sitting behind my desk with this fucking thing in my mouth the next time someone comes to ask me a question, and if anybody gets upset, that's just their problem, not mine.
What if he switches it up every other day, and the other day he sits on it?
I think that you're giving a lot of credit to the idea that he is not also sitting on one of those right now. This is a man who can afford 2 dildos, it would seem. He's got a nice truck.
Yeah.
He's, I would assume he's employed or whatever. But yeah, no, you know what? This picture makes more sense if there's another one of those in his butt right now. I think you might have landed on something the same way that he did.
Yeah. Well, he definitely masterminded 9/11.
He's not jerking off while he's doing it. He's just driving his car. Like, again, the two hands on the wheel is my favorite part. He's just like, when I quit smoking, I had to do something. Just gonna suck on fake wieners on my way to work.
Well, if you don't do that, the terrorists win.
We're ending on that.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.